Water carries light upon its surface as if time itself were dissolving into ripples. The first impression of Venice is not of streets or buildings, but of a mirror that never holds still. Gondolas rest quietly, their long, dark halls tethered to wooden posts that creak gently as the lagoon shifts. In the fading glow of sunset, shadows stretch across the canals, and what seems like silence is filled instead with the subdued rhythm of water touching stone. This is the threshold of Venice, a city that does not move quickly, a city that has endured by surrendering to slowness. To describe Venice is to describe an atmosphere suspended between water and stone. There is no sharp beginning or end. Rather, the city unfolds like a dream in which each step blends into the next. Narrow alleys, known as calli, extend without urgency, turning and curving until they meet small squares where churches rest in quiet dignity. Bridges rise modestly, arching above canals, only to descend once again to pavement smoothed by centuries of footsteps. The repetition of alleys and bridges, of stone and water, creates a rhythm that is hypnotic rather than monotonous, an invitation to let go of the instinct to hurry. Venice was founded more than a millennium ago upon a foundation of marshland and islands, held in place by wooden piles driven deep into the mud. This improbable beginning has shaped its destiny, a city suspended between fragility and endurance, constantly negotiating with the lagoon that surrounds it. The result is not simply architecture or geography, but a way of existing that obliges slowness. Streets narrow until only one person can pass at a time. Canals replace avenues, boats substitute carriages and cars. The structure itself teaches patience. The soundscape is equally restrained. Bells ring distantly, their tones carrying across the lagoon in waves that merge with the slap of water against stone. Gondoliers call to one another in low voices, their words echoing briefly before dissolving. Even footsteps sound different here, softened by the echo of stone corridors, multiplied by walls that press close together. These sounds are not loud, yet they are continuous, creating a background hum that lulls rather than stimulates. As light filters through the city, it changes its character in ways that are subtle but persistent. Morning light is sharp, drawing precise reflections of facades upon still canals. Afternoon softens these reflections, stretching them into pale colors that waver gently. Evening reduces everything to silhouettes, while lamps glow upon the water, their light doubled and trembling. The cycle repeats each day, not as a spectacle, but as a slow pulse that marks the passing of time. To arrive in Venice is to feel a suspension of ordinary rhythm. There are no cars, no horns, no avenues filled with haste. Instead, there is only the measured progress of water buses along the Grand Canal, the gliding of gondolas into narrow passages, and the unhurried crossing of bridges. This absence of speed alters perception, stretching each moment into something that seems longer, quieter, and more deliberate. The facades that line the canals are not uniform, yet together they form a harmony of decay and persistence. Byzantine arches stand beside Gothic tracery, Renaissance windows beside Baroque ornament. Their surfaces, once brilliant with color and detail, have been muted by centuries of wind and salt. The result is not loss, but softness, a palette of pale reds, ochres, grays, and whites, blended with the green reflection of water. These facades lean slightly, as though tired, yet they continue to endure, repeating their forms endlessly along the canals. To observe Venice closely is to notice details that repeat until they become part of the mind's rhythm. Iron railings rested by humidity, narrow balconies draped with faded cloth, stone steps descending directly into water, doors at the level of the canal where boats once entered. Each detail contributes not to variety, but to a pattern of sameness, a continuity that soothes through repetition. The city is often described as fragile, threatened by tides and time, yet fragility here is inseparable from endurance. For centuries, Venice has risen and fallen with the water, adapting to floods and to erosion. Each high tide leaves traces upon stone, yet the city remains, suspended in the slow dialogue between construction and decay. This balance lends Venice not only its beauty, but its rhythm, a rhythm that invites the mind to drift. To begin a journey through Venice is to accept this rhythm, to walk slowly, to listen to water, to watch light dissolve upon facades, to let footsteps echo into silence. It is not a place to be hurried through, but a place that unfolds most fully when allowed to repeat itself. Gondolas rocking, bells ringing, waves striking stone, facades leaning, reflections trembling, these are not events, but patterns, and within their repetition lies calm. And so the introduction to Venice is not a single image, but a gradual immersion, a city where the first impression is water, the second is silence, and the third is the realization that slowness is the only possible way to exist here. Venice, floating and enduring, presents itself as a city not of spectacle, but of gentle persistence, a city where each moment stretches into the next like ripples across a canal. Venice does not rest upon firm land, but upon a shifting dialogue between stone and water. Its geography is unlike that of other cities, for it is not built upon a continent, but upon the shallow expanse of the Venetian lagoon, a body of brackish water that stretches between the Adriatic Sea and the mainland of northern Italy. This lagoon is neither fully sea nor fully river, but something in between, a liminal space shaped by tides and currents. Within it, more than 100 small islands rise, and upon these islands the city of Venice was constructed, tied together by bridges, canals, and the persistence of its inhabitants. The foundations of Venice are as improbable as they are enduring. Wooden piles driven deep into the muddy ground centuries ago form the base upon which buildings stand. Submerged, these piles have hardened over time, preserved by the absence of oxygen, creating a forest beneath the water that holds up the palaces and churches above. Upon this hidden framework, stones were laid, facades were raised, and canals were carved into thoroughfares. The result is a city that appears to float, its reflection as present as its reality, suspended between sky and water. To understand Venice is to understand its structure of sestieri, the 6 districts into which the city is divided. Each sestiere possesses its own atmosphere, yet all are interwoven by canals and bridges. San Marco lies at the heart of the city, its wide square opening into an expanse of marble and light that contrasts with the narrow alleys leading to it. This is the ceremonial core of Venice, dominated by the Basilica of San Marco, the Doge's palace, and the tall Campanile. It has long been the political and spiritual center, the point where power once gathered and from which it radiated outward. To the north is Cannaregio, the most extensive of the districts. Its wide canals and quieter streets preserve a sense of domestic life. Here, the Jewish Ghetto, established in the 16th century, once confined a community while simultaneously shaping a cultural identity that endures in memory. Cannaregio remains more residential, less crowded, its rhythm softer and less ceremonial than that of San Marco. Castello, stretching to the east, is a district of long streets and broad open spaces. It is here that the Arsenale once operated, a shipyard of immense productivity that allowed Venice to dominate Mediterranean trade. Today, Castello is quieter, its atmosphere marked by gardens, local markets, and the sound of water lapping against aged stone. San Polo, the smallest district, lies closer to the Rialto, the ancient market heart of Venice. Its square, Campo San Polo, is one of the largest in the city, and nearby the Rialto Bridge arches across the Grand Canal, connecting centuries of mercantile activity. The district retains this mercantile identity, with narrow lanes filled with shops and echoes of trade that once sustained the Republic. Sonacroce to the west is the gateway between Venice and the mainland, for it is here that Piazza Roma connects with buses and cars. And the railway station of Santa Lucia links the city with the rest of Italy. Despite this connection, Santa Croce maintains its Venetian character, its alleys and squares blending gradually into the rhythm of canals. Dorsoduro, to the south, extends toward the mouth of the Grand Canal. Known for its artistic presence, it houses the Gallery dell'Accademia and the Peggy Guggenheim collection, as well as the imposing Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute. Its character is one of culture and quiet grandeur, balanced between the lagoon and the canal. Threading through these districts is the Grand Canal, the sinuous waterway that bends in a wide S shape through the heart of Venice. It is not merely a canal, but a stage, lined with palaces that display the city's architectural history. Byzantine arches, Gothic windows, and Renaissance facades stand side by side, their colors softened by salt and time, their reflections wavering in the green water below. Boats move along its length, some small and silent, others larger and steady, their passage creating waves that spread in slow rhythms to the stone steps. Beyond the Grand Canal, smaller canals extend like veins through the city, carrying with them both water and life. Some are wide enough to allow small ferries to pass. Others are so narrow that gondolas barely fit, their oars brushing the walls as they move. Bridges cross these canals in endless repetition, more than 400 in total, each one modest in scale, each one transforming movement into a gentle arch and descent. The geography of Venice demands patience. To walk here is to accept detours, to follow alleys that twist without symmetry, to cross bridges that offer no shortcuts. The city's very structure resists speed. It invites slowness not by choice, but by necessity, for water and stone permit no other rhythm. This structure has preserved Venice as a place of continuity, where life unfolds within the limits set by its lagoon and its foundations. And so, Venice is not a city that spreads outward endlessly, but one that is contained, self-sufficient, bounded by water. Its geography is its destiny, a city shaped by islands, by canals, by bridges, and by the Grand Canal that curves like a spine through its heart. To experience it is not to hurry across space, but to linger within it, to allow repetition and narrowness to dissolve urgency, leaving only the slow rhythm of water and stone. Life in Venice is measured not in speed, but in rhythm. The city's structure imposes a pace that cannot be accelerated, for every movement requires the crossing of bridges, the navigation of canals, and the quiet acceptance of detours. This deliberate rhythm shapes the daily existence of its residents, creating a way of life that is inseparable from the geography of water and stone. Morning begins not with the noise of traffic, but with the subdued hum of boats entering the city from the lagoon. Barges deliver produce, fish, and goods to the fondamenta, where they are unloaded and transferred to hand carts. These carts, pushed slowly through narrow calle, distribute supplies to shops, markets, and homes. The sound of this routine is soft, the wooden thud of crates upon stone, the murmur of vendors exchanging words, the echo of footsteps as carts pass over bridges. The Rialto market is the most vivid expression of this morning rhythm. Here, stalls are arranged with fruits, vegetables, and seafood, their colors muted by the diffused Venetian light. The market has functioned for centuries, and though its scale has diminished, its role remains central. Fishermen lay out the catch of the day, merchants arrange baskets of artichokes, tomatoes, and citrus, and the air is filled with scents of the sea and the earth. The sounds are not loud, but continuous. The quiet conversations of buyers, the splash of water dripping from fish, the creak of wooden tables. Transport through the city follows its own choreography. The vaporetto, or water bus, moves steadily along the Grand Canal and across the lagoon. Its motion is predictable, the rise and fall of its hull synchronized with the tide. Passengers board from floating platforms that sway with the water, and once aboard, the city unfolds in slow sequence, palaces gliding past, Bridges arching overhead, facades reflected in the canal. Even at crowded hours, the vaporetto remains bound by the inevitability of water, never hurried, never still, always moving at its measured pace. Gondolas, though often associated with visitors, embody another dimension of daily life. Their black hulls glide into narrow canals, propelled by the steady rhythm of the gondoler's oar. The sounds are subtle, the dip of wood into water, the soft splash as the boat advances, the occasional call exchanged between gondoliers as they navigate tight corners. Within these sounds is an ancient continuity, for the gondola has changed little over centuries, maintaining its role as a symbol of Venice's enduring relationship with water. For residents, daily errands require adaptation to the city's constraints. Groceries are carried across bridges, packages delivered by boat or cart, letters distributed by postmen who traverse alleys and fondamenta. Even the collection of refuse depends on barges that pass methodically along secondary canals, their motion slow but unbroken. These tasks cannot be rushed. They unfold within the rhythm imposed by bridges, canals, and tides. Over time, this rhythm becomes not an obstacle but a habit, shaping the very character of life in Venice. Afternoons bring a softer pace. Light bends across facades, reflecting upon canals in tones of gold and pale rose. Small squares open into spaces where cafes set out their tables. Conversations unfold in low tones, accompanied by the clinking of glasses, the quiet hum of espresso machines, and the occasional flutter of pigeons crossing the air. In residential districts such as Cannaregio or Castello, windows open onto courtyards where laundry sways in the lagoon breeze. Children's voices drift across stone corridors, and cats wander along narrow walkways, their presence absorbed into the stillness of the city. Evening alters the city once more. Gondolas return to their moorings, tied against wooden posts that creak as the tide shifts. The light fades, and lamps are reflected in the canals as trembling lines of gold. The soundscape changes. Footsteps echo more distinctly in empty alleys. Bells mark the passing hours with long metallic tones, and the occasional boat engine reverberates across the lagoon. Venice at night is not silent, but its sounds are stretched and isolated, separated by long intervals of quiet. Life here is not marked by urgency, but by acceptance. Residents know that tides may rise and flood pavements, that bridges' slow movement, that distance measured across water requires time. This patience becomes habit, and habit becomes a form of calm. Unlike cities where life is structured around acceleration, Venice enforces its own slowness. Within this slowness, the mind adjusts. Footsteps match the rhythm of bridges, and the sound of water becomes a constant presence. The continuity of daily life, the morning deliveries, the market routines, the movement of vaporetti, the ringing of bells forms a pattern that repeats itself across generations. Each day resembles the one before, and within this resemblance lies reassurance. Venice does not rely on sudden change or spectacle, but on endurance, on repetition, on the persistence of habits that remain steady against the movement of time. Thus, the life of Venice is not hurried but extended, not loud but continuous. To experience it is to witness a city where each moment stretches gently into the next, where the very structure of daily existence becomes a lull, carrying the observer into a rhythm of calm that persists even in memory. Water is not only the element upon which Venice was built. It is the city's constant presence, its defining feature, and its quietest voice. To live in Venice, or even to walk through it as a visitor, is to be accompanied at every moment by the sound, the movement, and the reflections of water. Unlike other cities where rivers or seas form a boundary or backdrop, in Venice water permeates every space. It replaces avenues, shapes the rhythm of footsteps, determines architecture, and dictates the pace of daily life. The Venetian lagoon is the great stage upon which the city rests. Extending for nearly 50 kilometers, it forms a shallow expanse of brackish water connected to the Adriatic Sea by narrow inlets. Its tides are gentle compared to those of the open sea, yet powerful enough to mark the rhythm of Venice. Twice each day the water rises and falls, and with it the reflections shift, the moorings creak, and the stones of the fondamenta absorb moisture before slowly releasing it again. This rise and fall is not violent, but cyclical, a perpetual reminder that the city is not fixed, but suspended between permanence and change. The phenomenon known as acqua alta represents the more dramatic expression of this rhythm. When tides combine with strong winds or pressure systems, the lagoon's water level rises higher than usual, covering pavements, squares, and steps. In Piazza San Marco, the lowest point of the city, the water often enters first, spreading slowly across the stone floor until the square becomes a shallow pool. Wooden walkways are placed to allow passage, yet the effect is always the same. The city momentarily merges with the lagoon, as though water were reclaiming what has always belonged to it. Residents adapt with patience, wearing boots, lifting furniture, adjusting routines. For them, a quo alta is not catastrophe but continuity, part of a rhythm that has endured for centuries. The sound of water defines the city's atmosphere as much as its site. It laps constantly against stone, against wooden posts, against the hulls of boats tied to the shore. Sometimes it is soft, a whispering rhythm that continues without pause. At other times it is sharper, striking the steps of palaces or echoing under bridges as gondolas pass. In narrow canals, where water is compressed between walls, the sound deepens, hollow and resonant. At night, when other noises diminish, this sound becomes the city's voice, steady and subdued, filling the silence with its repetition. Architecture itself is shaped by water. Palaces are designed with entrances at canal level, where boats once delivered goods and passengers. Their facades rise directly from the water, as if rooted in it, their reflections trembling with each ripple. Steps descend into the canals, sometimes disappearing under high tides, reappearing as the water retreats. Stone is marked by centuries of contact, its surfaces softened, its edges worn away by the persistent touch of salt. This erosion is not destructive alone. It lends Venice its character, blending grandeur with fragility, permanence with impermanence. Water also structures movement. The Grand Canal, with its wide, bending course, functions as the city's main artery, its traffic composed of vaporetti, barges, gondolas, and small private boats. Secondary canals branch outward, narrowing until they allow only the passage of one boat at a time. To cross the city is not to rush along a straight path, but to navigate a labyrinth shaped by water, where routes are determined as much by bridges as by currents. Each crossing of a bridge is a reminder of water's dominance, each ride on a vaporetto an immersion in its rhythm. Beyond the canals, the lagoon itself stretches into quiet expanses where the city dissolves into water and sky. Wooden poles, called bricole, rise from the lagoon, marking navigable channels. Birds rest upon them, their silhouettes reflected in the still water below. Small islands, some inhabited, others nearly abandoned, emerge from the surface, their outlines softened by distance and mist. In these places, the presence of water is overwhelming, and Venice appears less a city than an arrangement of stones floating upon an endless, reflective plain. Even in daily routines, water cannot be ignored. Deliveries arrive by barge, refuse is collected by boat, and even the fire brigade and ambulances move through canals. Life is shaped not by roads, but by waterways, and every service adapts to this structure. The rhythm is slower, yet continuous, carried forward by the inevitability of water. Water defines not only the physical, but also the psychological character of Venice. It creates a sense of detachment, a feeling that the city is removed from ordinary time and space. The reflections double every image, turning facades and bridges into tremulous apparitions. The sound of water repeats endlessly, lulling the mind into a slower pace. The movement of boats replaces the urgency of traffic with a steady, measured cadence. This environment induces calm, not by silence alone, but by a monotony that is gentle, continuous, and inescapable. Thus, water is not an accessory to Venice, but its essence. It is the medium through which the city exists, the element that defines its architecture, its daily life, its rhythm, and its atmosphere. To experience Venice is to experience water in all its forms, rising and falling, lapping and echoing, reflecting and eroding, soothing and persisting. It is a presence that does not fade, but accompanies every step, every glance, every sound, until it becomes indistinguishable from the city itself. At the center of Venice, both physically and symbolically, lies Piazza San Marco, a space that has been described for centuries as the city's drawing room. To enter the square is to experience a sudden expansion, for the narrow calli that lead to it open abruptly into a vast plain of stone, surrounded on all sides by arcades, churches, and towers. After the compressed scale of alleys and canals, the square appears almost infinite, its proportions amplified by the reflections of light and the measured rhythm of colonnades. The square itself is paved with geometric patterns of stone, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. It is long and rectangular, framed on three sides by arcades known as the procurati. These buildings once housed the offices of the procurators of San Marco, among the highest officials of the Venetian Republic. Their facades are lined with rows of arches, forming a continuous rhythm that repeats in soft monotony. Today, cafes extend beneath these arcades, their tables aligned with precision, their orchestras playing quietly into the open air. The sound drifts across the square, blending with the cooing of pigeons and the occasional echo of footsteps, creating an atmosphere that is lively yet subdued, ceremonial rather than hurried. On the eastern side of the square rises the Basilica of San Marco, the spiritual center of Venice. Its facade is a composition of arches, domes, and mosaics, blending influences from Byzantium, the Islamic world, and Western Europe. Gold tesserae shimmer softly, their brilliance diffused by the lagoon light, while figures of saints, angels, and biblical scenes unfold across the surface. 5 great domes rise above the basilica, their curves softened by the passage of centuries, their outlines blending with the sky. The interior, entirely covered in mosaics, is a space of dim golden light, where every surface seems to reflect and absorb at once. The floor is paved with marble patterns that undulate slightly, warped by the slow movement of the foundations over time, reminding the visitor that even grandeur here rests upon water. Beside the basilica stands the Campanile, the great bell tower of San Marco. Its red brick shaft rises vertically from the square, simple and severe, crowned by a pyramidal spire. The Campanile is both a landmark and a timekeeper, its bells regulating the hours of the city for centuries. Their sound carries across the lagoon, marking the rhythm of days and seasons, echoing into neighborhoods where no other clock might be visible. To stand beneath the tower is to feel its mass, its verticality a counterpoint to the horizontal expanse of the square. Opposite the basilica, connected by the Piazzetta that opens toward the lagoon, stands the Doge's palace, once the seat of government for the Venetian Republic. Its architecture is an expression of both authority and grace. The lower arcade, with its pointed arches and counterfoil tracery, supports an upper facade of pale stone patterned with lozenges. The building seems lighter than its size would suggest, its form softened by ornament, its reflection shimmering in the waters of the lagoon nearby. Inside, halls and chambers once hosted councils, courts, and ceremonies, their walls covered in paintings by Tintoretto and Veronese. Yet from the outside, the palace appears calm, almost detached, its grandeur tempered by the monotony of repeated arches. Between the Doge's palace and the Libreria Marciana stretches the Piazzetta, a smaller space that connects the square to the water. Here stand two great columns, one topped by the winged lion of St. Mark, the other by St. Theodore. They rise against the backdrop of the lagoon, marking the threshold between land and sea, between the ceremonial heart of Venice and the open expanse beyond. It was here that visitors once entered the city from the water, greeted by the symbols of authority and faith. Even now, the Piazzetta remains a place of transition, where the sound of water mingles with the voices of the square. The atmosphere of Piazza San Marco changes with the light. In the morning, the square is bright and open, filled with footsteps and the rustle of pigeons. At midday, the sun casts the shadows from the arcades, creating a rhythm of alternating light and darkness. In the evening, the marble facades reflect the last glow of the sun, while lamps begin to illuminate the arcades, their light trembling upon the stone pavement. At night, the square becomes quieter, the sound of orchestras fading into the darkness, the Basilica and the Campanile rising in silence against the sky. For centuries, Piazza San Marco has been the stage of Venetian life. Here, proclamations were made, festivals held, processions organized. It was the space where the Republic displayed its power and where citizens gathered to witness its rituals. Yet, even in its grandeur, the square possesses a rhythm of calm. The repetition of arches, the measured tone of bells, the endless passage of footsteps across its stones, all combine to create a sense of continuity, of time stretched rather than hurried. San Marco is more than a square. It is the embodiment of Venice's identity. It unites the religious, political, and social dimensions of the city, contained within a single open space. To stand in San Marco is to feel both the weight of history and the persistence of daily life. To witness a place where ceremony and routine overlap, where grandeur has softened into endurance. Its stones carry centuries of footsteps, its facades centuries of light, and its bells centuries of sound. In this endurance lies its calm, a calm that, like the city itself, lulls rather than excites, soothes rather than overwhelms. The Grand Canal is often described as the main street of Venice, yet it is not a street in the conventional sense. It is a waterway, wide and sinuous, bending in the form of an elongated S that cuts through the city from west to east, joining the lagoon at both ends. Its length is approximately 3.5 kilometers, but to traverse it feels far longer, for each moment along its banks opens into a succession of palaces, churches, and reflections. To move along the Grand Canal is not to hurry across a route, but to drift through history, architecture, and water, each layered upon the other in calm succession. The canal is best experienced from the slow progress of a vaporetto. From its deck, the city unfolds steadily, facades gliding past in sequence, their reflections trembling upon the water's surface. The sound is gentle but continuous. The low hum of the boat's engine, the splash of waves against stone steps, the occasional creak of wood as gondolas and barges shift with the current. Passengers stand silently, watching the palaces slip by, their surfaces softened by salt and time, their grandeur muted into calm persistence. The banks of the Grand Canal are lined with more than 170 buildings, many of them palaces built between the 12th and 8th centuries. Each facade tells of wealth once accumulated through trade. Each style reflects a moment in Venice's long history. The sequence begins with Byzantine forms, characterized by arches and mosaics, followed by the delicacy of Venetian Gothic with its pointed windows and lace-like tracery. Renaissance symmetry appears in later palaces, balanced and restrained, while Baroque facades add movement and ornament, their details reflected endlessly in the water below. One of the earliest and most striking examples is the Ciudoro, the Golden House, a 15th century Gothic palace whose facade was once gilded and painted, though today only traces of that brilliance remain. Its delicate windows, carved in stone with patterns of circles and arches, rise directly from the water, their reflection trembling in pale hues. The palace's beauty lies not in its perfection, but in its endurance, in the way its softened colors merge with the canal, creating a harmony of fragility and persistence. Nearby stands the Palazzo Baroque, notable for its exterior decorated with mosaics in vivid colors, a rarity among Venetian facades. Gold tesserae glint faintly in the lagoon light, their brilliance diminished but not erased by centuries of exposure. Further along, the Palazzo Grassi, built in the 18th century, displays a more sober style, its facade wide and symmetrical, its presence monumental yet softened by the constant motion of water against its steps. The canal was crossed by 4 bridges, each one distinct. The Rialto Bridge, the oldest, arches gracefully across the canal near its center. Built of stone in the 16th century, it replaces earlier wooden structures, its arcades lined with shops that overlook the water. The bridge's steps are worn smooth by centuries of passage, and its silhouette is among the most recognizable images of Venice. The Accademia Bridge, further along, offers one of the finest views of the canal, framing the dome of Santa Maria della Salute at its bend. 2 newer bridges, the Scalzi and the Constitution, complete the crossings, each with its own character, yet all sharing the same rhythm of arch and descent. The Grand Canal narrows and widens in turn, creating a sequence of spaces that feel alternately intimate and expansive. At some points, the facades rise close together, the water compressed between them, the reflections dense and trembling. At others, the canal opens into wide stretches where palaces recede and the sky expands above the water. The movement is gradual, never abrupt, unfolding like a slow melody of stone and reflection. The palaces themselves, though once symbols of power, are now softened by time. Their lower levels are often partially submerged, their steps eroded by centuries of tides. Doors that once opened to boats now rest at the water's surface, their wood swollen and darkened by salt. Yet above these worn foundations, windows and balconies remain, their patterns repeating endlessly along the banks, creating a visual rhythm that lulls the observer into calm contemplation. Churches also line the Grand Canal, their domes and campaniles rising above the palaces. The Church of San Stay, the Church of San Simeon Piccolo, and most prominently, the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute mark the waterway with their presence. Santa Maria della Salute, built in the 17th century as a votive offering against the plague, stands at the entrance of the canal where it meets the lagoon. Its great dome, visible from afar, seems to rise directly from the water, its white stone glowing in the light, its reflection merging with the canal below. As evening descends, the Grand Canal transforms once more. Lamps along the fondamenta cast their light upon the water, creating lines of gold that tremble and break with each ripple. Gondolas glide silently, their movement accompanied only by the steady dip of oars. The hum of the vaporetto grows softer as traffic diminishes, leaving longer intervals of quiet. The palaces, now in shadow, appear as silhouettes, their details lost, their presence reduced to outlines mirrored in the water. To drift along the Grand Canal is to experience Venice in its essence, water and stone, history and endurance, light and reflection. The journey is not hurried, for the canal resists haste, obliging all who traverse it to move at the pace of water. In the slowness lies its character, a character that soothes by repetition, that calms by continuity, that lulls the mind into the rhythm of the city itself. Venice is a city suspended not only upon water, but also upon bridges. Without them, its islands would remain fragmented, its movement impossible, its rhythm incomplete. More than 400 bridges cross its canals, each one small in scale, each one repeating the same simple gesture. A modest ascent, a short span across water, and a descent back to stone pavements. To walk Venice is to walk bridges, to feel this movement repeated endlessly until the act itself becomes meditative. Yet among the many crossings, a few stand apart, not for their grandeur alone, but for the weight of history, memory, and symbolism that they carry. The most famous is the Rialto Bridge, arching across the Grand Canal at its midpoint. Built in the late 16th century to replace earlier wooden structures, the bridge is made of white Istrian stone, its single span rising gracefully above the water. Shops line both sides of its central passage, their small windows opening onto the canal, while stairways descend on either side to the fondamento below. The bridge is both functional and ceremonial, a place of commerce and of spectacle. Its steps, polished by centuries of footsteps, hold the memory of countless crossings, merchants bringing goods to the Rialto market, residents hurrying across with parcels, travelers pausing to look down upon the traffic of boats. The view from its summit remains one of the city's defining images. Palaces aligned along the curve of the canal, gondolas drifting below, reflections merging into a tremulous continuity. Further along the Grand Canal stands the Accademia Bridge, constructed of wood in the 20th century but occupying a site that has long been crossed. Its structure is more modest, its material warmer, its presence less monumental than that of the Rialto. Yet the view it provides is among the most celebrated in Venice. From its span, one can see the canal bending gently toward the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute, its great dome rising at the entrance to the lagoon. The scene has been painted, photographed, and remembered countless times. Yet in the slowness of the moment, it remains inexhaustible, a perspective where water, architecture, and light converge in harmony. The Bridge of the Barefoot, or Ponte degli Scalzi, near the railway station, is another stone crossing, connecting Santa Croce with Cannaregio. Its arc is simple, its lines clear, its role practical. Trains arriving from the mainland release passengers into Venice, and the bridge becomes their first passage across water, their first encounter with the city's rhythm of ascent and descent. Though less celebrated, it forms part of the continuity of Venice, one more gesture of connection, one more rhythm added to the city's endless repetition. The most evocative, however, may be the Bridge of Sighs, the Ponte dei Sospiri. Unlike the open spans of other bridges, it is enclosed a short, covered passage of white limestone that connects the Doge's palace with the prisons across the canal. Small barred windows open onto the water, their light faint, their view restricted. The name, romanticized over centuries, refers to the size of prisoners who crossed it, glimpsing the lagoon for the last time before confinement. Today, its symbolism is gentler, yet it remains a bridge of transition, a reminder of both the grandeur and the severity of the Republic. Its reflection in the narrow canal below, often broken by the passage of gondolas, adds to its atmosphere of melancholy persistence. Yet beyond these celebrated examples, the essence of Venice lies in its countless smaller bridges. Each one is simple, a curve of stone or iron spanning a narrow canal, its parapet modest, its steps few. They are encountered in repetition, one after another, until the act of crossing becomes rhythm rather than event. To walk through Cannaregio or Castello, one crosses dozens of these bridges, each nearly identical, each offering the same view of water below, facades leaning above, reflections trembling between. Their monotony is not dull but soothing, for it creates a continuity that slows the mind, aligning it with the city's pace. The bridges of Venice are not only structures of passage, but instruments of rhythm. They impose a movement of ascent and descent upon every journey, a pattern that repeats endlessly throughout the day. This pattern, like the sound of water or the ringing of bells, becomes part of the city's lull, part of the continuity that defines life here. In their modesty lies their power, for it is through their repetition that the city holds its shape, its unity, and its calm. Thus, the bridges of Venice are not monuments apart, but fragments of a single, continuous structure, the city itself. From the Rialto to the smallest crossing in a quiet alley, each bridge is part of the same rhythm, each one echoing the same movement, each one binding water and stone into a whole. To cross them is to participate in the city's essence, to repeat its gesture of connection, to surrender to its unhurried continuity. The Zattere of Dorsoduro lies on the southern edge of Venice, stretching along the Grand Canal and extending outward toward the lagoon. Its name, meaning hard ridge, refers to the slightly firmer ground upon which it was built, yet its character is defined not by firmness but by calm. Compared to the crowded passages of San Marco or the mercantile bustle of the Rialto, Dorsoduro possesses a quieter rhythm, one shaped by art, devotion, and the presence of water. To walk through Dorsoduro is to encounter spaces where the city's grandeur softens into contemplation, where churches and galleries blend with narrow alleys and long fondamenta that follow the line of the canals. At the entrance to the Grand Canal, where its waters meet the lagoon, rises the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute, perhaps the most striking symbol of Dorsoduro. Built in the 17th century as an offering of gratitude for deliverance from the plague, the basilica stands upon a foundation of thousands of wooden piles, its massive dome rising above the water like a beacon. The facade is adorned with statues of saints and allegorical figures, their stone softened by centuries of exposure. Inside, the space is circular, its marble floor patterned with geometric designs, its light diffused through high windows, its atmosphere one of solemn endurance. The basilica's dedication to health and salvation, expressed in its very name, reflects the resilience of the city, its capacity to endure hardship through devotion and persistence. From the basilica, the long promenade of the Zattere extends westward along the Giudecca Canal. This wide fondamenta, lined with warehouses, churches, and cafes, faces the island of Giudecca, its waters broader and calmer than those of the inner canals. The Zattere has long been a place of leisure, where residents and visitors alike stroll slowly, watching the light shift upon the lagoon, listening to the faint hum of boats passing steadily across the canal. The promenade offers space and openness, qualities rare in Venice, where narrowness usually prevails. Here, the rhythm is expansive, yet still unhurried, shaped by the breadth of the horizon and the endless repetition of water against stone. Dorsoduro is also the district of art. The Gallery dell'Accademia, housed in former convent buildings, holds one of the most important collections of Venetian painting. Works by Bellini, Carpaccio, Giorgione, Tintoretto, and Veronese line its rooms, their colors muted by centuries, their subjects echoing the city's devotion, history, and daily life. To walk through its galleries is to follow the progression of Venetian art from the Gothic to the Rococo, each canvas reflecting the interplay of light and water that defines the city itself. The rhythm of the galleries is slow, each room leading to the next in quiet succession, each painting a fragment of the city's memory. Nearby, the Peggy Guggenheim collection offers a different perspective. Housed in the unfinished Palazzo Venere dei Leoni, its low, horizontal facade opens onto the Grand Canal, while its interior holds modern works by Picasso, Pollock, Kandinsky, and others. The contrast between the contemporary art and the ancient city is softened by the building's modest scale. Its rooms intimate, its garden quiet. Visitors move slowly through its spaces, absorbing forms and colors that differ from Venetian tradition, yet share its concern with light, reflection, and endurance. The collection, though modern, becomes part of the city's continuity, another layer added to its rhythm. Dorsoduro also contains smaller churches and squares that contribute to its atmosphere of calm. The Church of San Sebastiano, decorated with frescoes and canvases by Veronese, remains a place where art and devotion coexist quietly. The Church of the Carmini, with works by Lorenzo Lotto and Giambattista Tiepolo, preserves another fragment of Venetian artistic heritage. These churches, less crowded than San Marco or the Furry, offer spaces where silence prevails, where footsteps echo softly upon marble floors, where the repetition of prayers blends with the monotony of bells. The district is shaped by water as much as by art. Narrow canals thread through its interior, crossed by modest bridges, their surfaces reflecting facades of pale stone and faded red. Along the Fondamenta del Zattere and the Fondamenta Nani, gondolas and small boats rest at their moorings, rocking gently with the tide. The sound is continuous but subdued, the lap of water against hulls, the creak of wooden posts, the occasional dip of an oar. These sounds form the background of Dorsoduro, a lull that persists even as life continues. Evenings in Dorsoduro bring a particular calm. The Zattere reflects the glow of sunset, its waters turning gold and rose, its horizon expanding into the lagoon. Lamps are lit along the fondamenta, their light mirrored in trembling lines upon the water. The Basilica of the Salute becomes a silhouette, its dome dark against the fading sky, its presence monumental yet softened by shadow. The rhythm of the district slows further, its streets quieter, its canals darker, its sounds reduced to the occasional echo of footsteps or the distant ringing of bells. Dorsoduro embodies a Venice that is both grand and subdued, both ceremonial and intimate. Its churches and galleries preserve the city's artistic memory. Its promenade opens onto the lagoon's expanse. Its basilica rises as a symbol of devotion and resilience. Yet through all these elements runs the same continuity: the presence of water, the repetition of sound, the endurance of stone. To walk Dorsoduro is to move slowly through layers of history, art, and devotion, each one softened by time, each one merging into the lull of the city's rhythm. Cannaregio, situato al nord del Gran Canal, isole sostiene más extenso de Venecia, y uno de los más legados a la vida cotidiana de sus habitantes. Mientras San Marco concentra la monumentalidad ceremonial, y Dorsoduro acoge los artes y la devoción. Cannaregio offers un ritmo más doméstico, más silencioso, más próximo a la repetición de los gestos simples que marcan el día a día. Caminar por Cannaregio es adentrarse en una Venecia más íntima, donde la monumentalidad se diluye en la rutina. Wide los canals se vuelven más largos, más amplios, más tranquilos. El origen de su nombre, según algunos, está vinculado a los canaverales Cannaregia, que crecen en la zona antes de que se levantaran las primeras construcciones. Y esa memoria vegetal persistía en el ritmo pasado de sus canals, en la sensación de un espacio más abierto, menos saturado que los estériles centrales. A lo largo de su historia, Cannaregio ha sido puerta de entrada a la ciudad. Los viajeros que llegaban por tierra a través del Punta la Libertad o por tren hasta la estación de Santa Lucia cruzaban primero por sus calles. Aun así, su atmósfera se mantuvo más cómoda, como si la amplitud de sus canals absorbiera el movimiento y lo transformara en quietud. Uno de los lugares más significativos de Cannaregio es el antiguo ghetto judío, establecido en 1516 por decreto de la República de Venecia. El término ghetto, nacido aquí, se extendió después a otras ciudades del mundo. Se trataba de un área cerrada durante la noche, custodiada por puertas y vigilancia, donde la comunidad judía estaba obligada a residir. A pesar de la segregación, el ghetto se convirtió en un espacio de intensa vida cultural, comercial y religiosa. Sus edificios, más altos que en el resto de la ciudad, reflejaban la necesidad de albergar a una población numerosa en un espacio reducido. Hoy, el ghetto conserva sin estridencia la memoria de aquellos siglos. Sinagogas ocultas tras fachadas discretas, museos que explican su historia, y un ambiente sereno en el que la memoria convive con el presente. El corazón de Cannaregio es el amplio canal de Cannaregio, que conecta el Gran Canal con la laguna exterior. A lo largo de este canal, la vida se despliega en escenas cotidianas, embarcaciones de mercancías de cargancayas, vaporetti avanzan lentamente hacia Murano o Barano. Vecinos conversan apoyados en los parapetos de piedra. El ritmo aquí es más prolongado, menos marcado por el turismo masivo, más cercano a la continuidad repetitiva que define la vida veneciana. Calles como la Strada Nova, abierta en el siglo XIX, muestran un rostro más animado de Cannaregio. A lo largo de su recorrido se suceden tiendas, cafés y panaderías, donde el olor del pan recién horneado se mezcla con el aire húmedo de los canals. No obstante, basta desviarse por una de las muchas calles laterales para recuperar el silencio. Ali, el sonido se reduce a la resonancia de pasos sobre piedra, al eco de voces leonas que se apagan rápidamente, al murmullo constante del agua contra las orillas. Cannaregio es también un espacio de iglesias discretas, menos visitadas, donde el arte y la devoción se entrelazan en calma. La iglesia de la Madonna del Orto, asociada al pintor Tintoretto, guarda algunas de sus obras más significativas en un interior sobrio y recogido. Su fachada de ladrillo, sencilla y austera, se refleja en el canal adyacente, repitiéndose en el agua como un eco visual. La iglesia de San Giobbe, de arquitectura renacentista temprana, offers otra pausa silenciosa, otra estancia donde el tiempo se dilata en las superficies de mármol, y en las pinturas suavizadas por la penumbra. El ambiente residencial de Cannaregio se reconoce en sus ritmos lentos, ropa tendida sobre las calles. Gentes mayores sentadas en los bancos de las plazas pequeñas, niños jugando en los campi ligados, siguiendo con calma el paso de los viandantes. Todo ello conforma una cadencia donde el tiempo parece menos cargado de historia monumental y más ligado a lo cotidiano. La vida aquí se mide en el lento paso de los días, en los sonidos de puertas que se abren y cierran, en las luces que se encienden una tras otra al anochecer. Al caer la tarde, los canals de Cannaregio se tornan espacios largos y tranquilos, reflejando lámparas y fachadas en líneas quebradas. Los vaporetti cruzan despacio hacia las islas. Las campanas de iglesias menores marcan la hora con tonos breves. Y las conversations de vecinos se apagan gradualmente hasta llegar a un silencio interrumpido solo por el agua. En ese silencio, Cannaregio muestra su esencia, un barrio que guarda la memoria del ghetto, las sencillas de la vida local, la continuidad de los días que pasan sin sobresalto. Cannaregio es, en definitiva, un contrapunto a la monumentalidad de San Marco o la densidad artística de Dorsoduro. Aquí, la grandeza se encuentra en la repetición tranquila de lo cotidiano, en los largos canals que reflejan el cielo sin prisa, en los pasos que se suceden sobre puentes modestos, en la vida que continúa sin necesidad de espectáculo. Castello se extiende hacia el este de Venecia como un espacio de tres esteras lentamente hasta tocar el horizonte de la laguna. Es el sestier más grande de todos, y en su amplitud se siente un aire diferente. Minos Mercado por el Turismo y más ligado a los ritmos antiguos de la vida veneciana. Piazza San Marco representa la monumentalidad y Cannaregio la vida domestica. Castello conserva una mezcla de solemnidad naval, calles amplias y rincones tranquilos que parecen apartados del tiempo. El corazón histórico de Castello es el Arsenal, el antiguo astillero de la Serenísima República de Venecia, fundado en el siglo XII y empleado en siglos posteriores. Llegó a ser uno de los complejos industriales más grandes y avanzados de Europa. Detrás de sus murallas de ladrillo, miles de obreros, carpinteros, califates y marineros trabajaban de forma organizada en una producción casi en cadena que asombraba a visitantes y embajadores extranjeros. En cuestión de horas, un barco podía pasar de la madera en bruto al casco ensamblado, y en días estar completamente equipado para navegar. El arsenal no fue solamente un astillero, sino el motor del poder marítimo veneciano. La base sobre la que la República construyó su imperio comercial. Las grandes puertas del arsenal, flanqueadas por leones de mármol y coronadas con esculturas, permanecen como testigos de ese esplendor. Hoy, en su interior, ya no se fabrican galeras, pero el lugar conserva un silencio solemne. Espacios inmensos, naves de ladrillo con techos de madera, mules largos que se adentran en el agua, todo parece detenido en un tiempo suspendido, un eco de lo que fue. En las últimas décadas, algunos de estos espacios han sido reutilizados para la Bienal de Venecia, la gran exposición internacional de arte y arquitectura. Así, en Castello, el pasado naval y el presente artístico se entrelazan en el mismo escenario, unidos por la continuidad del espacio. Más allá del arsenal, Castello ofrece un rostro distinto al de los distritos centrales. Sus calles son más largas, sus plazas más abiertas, sus canals más tranquilos. Aquí, los campanili se suceden sin monumentalidad, como espacios de vida cotidiana. Vecinos que conversan en voz baja, ropa colgando sobre las calles, el sonido de niños jugando en patios. Todo contribuye a una atmósfera más serena, más vinculada a lo doméstico. El paso de los días en Castello se mide por el repique de campanas en iglesias menores, por el lento movimiento de góndolas solitarias en canals estrechos, por la quietud que se instala en las tardes. En el extremo oriental del Sistir se abre la amplia zona de los jardines plicos, conocidos como Giardini della Biennale. Es creado en el siglo XIX y es uno de los pocos espacios verdes de Venecia con árboles que proyectan sombra sobre senderos de grava, bancos que miran hacia la laguna y pabellones nacionales, construidos por la Bienal de Arte. Aquí el ritmo se alarga en más. Los sonidos de la ciudad se atenúan, y solo permanecen el murmullo del agua contra las orillas, y el canto de aves que cruzan el aire húmedo. El contraste con la densidad urbana del resto de Venecia convierte este lugar en un refugio, una pausa en la continuidad de piedra y agua. La iglesia de San Pietro de Castello, que fue durante siglos la catedral de Venecia, antes de que San Marco asumiera ese papel, permanece como un símbolo de asistir. Situada en una isla unida por puentes, su fachada de mármol blanco refleja la luz con una claridad sobria, mientras en su interior la atmósfera se llena de penumbra y silencio. La iglesia conserva la sensación de un pasado más remoto, cuando Castello era el centro religioso de la ciudad. Hoy su aislamiento y su colmo la convierten en un lugar de contemplación, apartado del bullicio del resto de Venecia. Castello también conserva un ritmo ligado al agua en su forma más amplia. A lo largo del paseo maritimo de Riva degli Schiavoni, la laguna se abre en una extensión amplia y luminosa. Barcos pequeños, ferries y gondolas cruzan la superficie. Mientras las fachadas de San Marco y de la Salute se ven a lo lejos, reflejadas en el agua. Aquí el viento trae consigo un murmullo constante de olas suaves, un sonido que se oye al paso lento de quienes recorren el paseo. Al atardecer, Castello adquiere un carácter especialmente sereno. El sol desciende sobre la laguna, teniendo agua de tonos dorados y rosados. Las murallas del arsenal proyectan sombras largas. Los jardines se sumergen en una penumbra tranquila. Y las campanas marcan las horas con tonos graves que se disuelven en el aire. El silencio, interrumpido solo por el chapotillo de las olas, envuelve el barrio en una atmósfera de recogimiento. Así, Castello se revela como un sistema de contrastes suaves, la monumentalidad del arsenal, el sosiego de sus plazas, la amplitud de sus jardines, la solemnidad de sus iglesias. En él conviven la memoria del poder naval con la persistencia de lo cotidiano, la grandeza de la historia con la repetición tranquila del presente. Su identidad, como la de toda Venecia, se encuentra en esa continuidad que no necesita de sobresaltos. En la calma que se extiende como el agua de la laguna, siempre presente, siempre persiste. San Polo es el sitio más pequeño de Venecia, pero su importancia histórica y simbólica es profunda. Situado en la orilla occidental del Gran Canal, su corazón es el área del Rialto, que durante siglos fue el centro económico de la Serenísima República. Aquí se desarrollaban las transacciones comerciales que sostuvieron la riqueza veneciana. Aquí llegaban las mercancías traídas desde el Mediterráneo Oriental. Y aquí se levantaban los mercados que en hoy conservan parte de ese italiano. El nombre de San Polo procede de la iglesia homónima dedicada a San Pablo, apóstol situada en un campiello recogido que refleja la esencia del barrio. Plazas de tamago humano, piels estrechas fachadas, modestas y una vida más ligada a lo funcional que a lo monumental. Sin embargo, en torno a la zona del Rialto se concentraba la verdadera vitalidad de la economía veneciana, un espacio que todavía hoy vibra en las primeras horas de la mañana. El mercado del Rialto es uno de los lugares donde se percibe con mayor claridad el pulso cotidiano de Venecia. Desde tiempos medievales, los mercaderes acudían a esta zona para vender pescado, frutas, verduras y especies traídas de lugares lejanos. Al amanecer, barcazas cargadas de productos atracan en los muelles, descargando calles que se colocan en los puestos bajo arcadas cubiertas. Los sonidos son suaves pero persistentes, el murmullo de conversations en dialecto, el roast de madera sobre piedra, el chapotillo constante del agua que acompaña cada movimiento. La atmósfera, más que bulliciosa, es repetitiva y constante, como si el mercado latiera con un ritmo ancestral que no se interrumpe. Cerca del mercado se alza el punto Rialto, que une San Polo con San Marco. Es el punto más antiguo y emblemático de la ciudad, y durante siglos fue el único que cruzaba el Gran Canal. Sus escalones de piedra, desgastados por el paso incesante de los siglos, conducen a un corredor de tiendas diminutas donde se venden joyas, recuerdos y objetos cotidianos. La vista de su cima sigue siendo una de las imágenes más reconocibles de Venecia, el Gran Canal desplegándose hacia ambos lados, con góndolas, vaporetto y palacios que se reflejan lentamente en las aguas verdosas. San Polo no es solo mercado. También alberga iglesias que contienen importantes fragmentos de la memoria artística de Venecia. La Iglesia de Santa Maria Gloriosa dei Frari, conocida simplemente como Los Frari, aunque se sitúa en el límite entre San Polo y Santa Croce, es uno de los templos más vastos y imponentes de la ciudad. Su interior, del estilo gótico, guarda obras maestras como la Ascension de Tiziano y esculturas de Donatello. Todo envuelto en una penumbra solemne que multiplica la sensación de recogimiento. Más pequeña pero igualmente significativa es la iglesia de San Marco, adornada con los grandes lienzos de Tintoretto, que cubren paredes y techos en una sucesión de escenas dramáticas suavizadas por la luz que penetra a través de las ventanas. San Polo conserva también la huella de los antiguos gremios y cofradías que participaban en la vida social y religiosa de la ciudad. Las escuelas, edificios de reunión de estas hermandades, eran tanto centros de devoción como espacios de solidaridad. La escuela grande de San Rocco, mencionada junto a la iglesia homónima, es la más célebre, con sus salas cubiertas de frescos y lienzos que narran episodios bíblicos con un dramatismo contenido por la penumbra. En sus calles más apartadas, San Polo muestra un rostro más doméstico, con pequeños campielli donde se instalan cafés modestos, talleres artesanales y viviendas de apariencia sencilla. Aquí la vida transcurre con una cadencia pausada, menos marcada por el paso constante de visitantes, más próxima al ritmo de quienes han habitado el barrio durante generaciones. El sonido predominante no es el bullicio, sino la repetición tranquila de los pasos sobre piedra, el golpeteo de puertas de madera que se abren y cierran, el eco de voces que se disuelven en los estrechos corredores. Al caer la tarde, la zona del Rialto se transforma. Los mercados se recogen, las barcazas desaparecen, y las luces se encienden bajo los soportales. El punto, iluminado, refleja su arco en el canal, como una figura duplicada, mientras el rumor del agua persiste como acompañamiento inmutable. Los visitantes disminuyen, y los vecinos ocupan lentamente las mesas de las tabernas para disfrutar de los chiquetti, pequeñas porciones de comida acompañadas de vino. El murmullo de conversations se mezcla con el golpeteo ocasional de vasos y cubiertos, componiendo una melodía baja, que fly con la misma lentitud que el agua bajo el punto. San Polo encarna la tradición mercantil de Venecia no solo en su historia, sino en su continuidad. El comercio que enriqueció a la República, los mercados que dieron vida a sus calles, las iglesias y cofradías que integraron fe y oficio, todo ello persiste, suavizado por el paso de los siglos, repetido hasta convertirse en hábito. En San Polo, la memoria del intercambio económico se une con la calma de lo cotidiano, recordando que la grandeza de Venecia se sostuvo siempre sobre los gestos repetidos de la vida diaria, sobre la continuidad más que sobre el acontecimiento. Santa Cruz es el sestier que marcó la transición entre el mundo exterior y la ciudad suspendida sobre el agua. Aquí se encuentra Piazza Roma, el único lugar de Venecia donde los automóviles pueden circular, y la estación de Santa Lucia, donde llegan los trenes que cruzan el puente ferroviario tendido sobre la laguna. Santa Croce es, por tanto, la puerta de entrada para la mayoría de quienes visitan la ciudad. Sin embargo, más allá de ese bullicio inicial, el barrio se transforma poco a poco en una red de calles estrechas, canals tranquilos y plazas modestas que anuncian ya la cadencia lenta que caracteriza a toda Venecia. El viajero que desciende del tren en Santa Lucia o del autobús en Piazza Roma escucha primero los sonidos del mundo exterior, motores, Militas rodando sobre pavimento, voces intrimus claras en lenguas diversas. Pero bastan unos pasos para que is rumor empieza a apagarse. Al acercarse los mules, lo que se escucha ya no son ruedas en motores, sino el murmullo del agua contra la piedra. El ros de las proas de los barcos, el eco de las campanas de una iglesia cercana. Es una transición progresiva, como si el viajero pasara lentamente de un mundo a otro, abandonando el ritmo acelerado para entregarse al pulso dilatado de la laguna. Santa Cruz conserva vestigios de su historia menos monumental y más funcional. Fue siempre un espacio de almacenes, talleres y conventos, un lugar donde se descargaban mercancías que después se distribuyen por el resto de la ciudad. Todavía hoy, en los muelles cercanos a Piazza Roma, pueden ver barquillas de carga que depositan calles, sacos y productos destinados a mercados y negocios. El movimiento es constante, pero no veloz. Todo se adapta al ritmo impuesto por los canals y las puentes. El barrio está atravesado por canals tranquilos, donde góndolas se balancean suavemente y vaporetti realizan paradas antes de entrarse en el Gran Canal. Sus puentes son sencillos, de piedra o hierro, y cada uno ofrece una vista estrella de fachadas desiguales reflejadas en el agua. Los pasos son menos concurridos que en San Marco o Rialto, y a menudo solo se oye el eco de pasadas solitarias. El viajero que se adentra en Santa Cruz descubre una Venecia más colada, menos escénica, más un lugar de tránsito cotidiano que un escenario monumental. Uno de los espacios más notables del barrio es la iglesia de San Piccolo, situada frente a la estación de tren, en la orilla del Gran Canal. Su gran cúpula verde, visible desde los vagones antes de descender, se alza como un signo de bienvenida. El interior, de planta circular, ofrece una penumbra fresca donde el murmullo de la ciudad queda suspendido. Esta iglesia, aunque no tan visitada como otras, marca el umbral simbólico entre el exterior y el interior de Venecia, entre el movimiento del viaje y la quietud de la estancia. Santa Cruz guarda también rincones más íntimos, como la iglesia de San Nicolò Tolentino, con su severa fachada de columnas clásicas, o el pequeño campanile de San Giacomo dell'Orio, donde se respira un ambiente vecinal y apacible. En este espacio arbolado, los niños juegan mientras los vecinos se sientan a conversar, y el sonido predominante es el de las conversaciones bajas y el de los pasos que se suceden con calma. El contraste más marcado de Santa Cruz se percibe al recorrer el tramo inicial del Gran Canal. Ali el ruido del tráfico de barcos, los embarcaderos del vaporetto y las llegadas de visitantes marcan un compás más vivo. Pero basta adentrarse hacia el interior del barrio para que la velocidad se disuelva. Calles estrechas, fachadas desviadas, ropa tendida entre ventanas, gatos que cruzan sin prisa. Todo ello crea un ritmo más lento, más humano, que anuncia el resto de la ciudad. Al atardecer, Santa Cruz se envuelve en una calma particular. El flujo de viajeros disminuye, los vaporetti se suceden a intervalos más espaciados, y la luz dorada se refleja en las aguas del Gran Canal frente a la estación. Piazza Roma, que al mediodía rebosa de movimiento, se vive vaciando poco a poco, y el rumor de motores se pasa al sonido del agua y a las campanas que marcan las horas. La ciudad, incluso en su parte más bulliciosa, acaba siempre retornando a su esencia de silencio y agua. Santa Cruz es, en definitiva, el umbral de Venecia. Su carácter es menos monumental, más funcional, pero indispensable para comprender la estructura de la ciudad. Hizo lugar donde el viajero abandona el ritmo exterior, y aprende, paso a paso, a caminar más despacio, a escacar el sonido del agua, a aceptar el tiempo dilatado de la laguna. Cada llegada y cada partida recuerdan que Venecia no es un destino apresurado, sino un espacio suspendido en un ritmo propio, donde incluso la entrada más ruidosa se convierte tarde o temprano en silencio. North of Venice, in the serene expanse of the lagoon, lies Murano, an island whose identity is inextricably linked to the art of glass. Its name immediately evokes the transparency and brilliance of that material, crafted for centuries with techniques passed down from generation to generation. Visiting Murano means leaving behind the dense urban weave of the main city and entering a more open, slower space where the air is steeped in tradition and the water reflects a calmer rhythm of life. Murano is not a single island, but rather a small archipelago made up of several minor islands connected by bridges, crossed by canals wider and less crowded than those of Venice. The vaporetto ride from the city takes only a few minutes, yet it is enough to sense a shift in atmosphere. The water opens up to a broader horizon. The city's murmur fades away, and the journey becomes a transition toward deeper calm. The history of glass in Murano dates back to the 13th century, when the Venetian Republic moved the glassmakers' furnaces here to reduce the risk of fires in the urban center. That decision transformed the island into a unique artisanal hub. Master glassmakers enjoyed privileges, but also strict restrictions. They were forbidden to leave the Republic to prevent their secrets from spreading. In their workshops, techniques were perfected that made Murano glass famous throughout Europe. Crystal clear transparency, mosaics of color, delicate enamels, filigree as light as lace. Walking through Murano means crossing a series of quiet streets, lined with workshops and shops displaying glass pieces and brightly lit windows. Vases, lamps, goblets, and sculptures shimmer under the soft light, reflecting shades of blue, green, and red. In some workshops, you can still watch artisans at work, shaping molten glass with slow, precise movements, turning the glowing mass at the end of a metal rod, blowing gently until it takes form. The sound of fire and the rhythmic breath of the craftsmen mingle with the silence outside, creating a contrast between the intensity of the workshop and the stillness of the streets. The island also holds monumental treasures. The Basilica of Santa Maria San Donato, with Byzantine origins, is one of the oldest churches in the lagoon. Its apse with mosaics and its polychrome marble floor evoke serene spirituality, while tradition claims that it houses the bones of a legendary dragon. Less visited than St. Mark's, the church offers a dim and meditative space where silence reigns and time seems suspended. The Museo del Vetro, located in the Palazzo Giustinian, preserves centuries of glassmaking memory. Its rooms display pieces ranging from early medieval examples to contemporary creations, showcasing the evolution of styles, techniques, and uses. Walking through its galleries is like following a transparent thread through time, where each case reflects both artisanal skill and the continuity of a tradition that still endures. Life in Murano flows at a slower pace than in the main city. Its wider, quieter canals mirror simple facades painted in pale tones that contrast with the bright glass in the shop windows. Cafes and restaurants open onto peaceful squares, where the sounds of dishes, low conversations, and the wane from the lagoon blend into a subdued harmony. Here, everyday repetition gains a different clarity, less marked by grandeur, closer to the calm of village life. At sunset, Murano takes on a particularly serene atmosphere. Workshops close their doors, shop lights slowly fade, and the reflections of lamps stretch across the canals. The day's murmur dwindles to a few voices, the echo of solitary footsteps, the constant ripple of water. The island sinks into a silence interrupted only by the occasional passage of a vaporetto crossing to Venice or other islands. Murano embodies the persistence of tradition and the calm of its own rhythm. Its identity lies in the glass, but also in the water surrounding it, in the continuity of its workshops and squares, in the reflection of modest facades on quiet canals. Visiting it means entering a different Venice, less monumental yet equally essential, a Venice that patiently repeats the gestures of its glass masters, that preserves memory in transparent, fragile objects, and that offers travelers the experience of prolonged silence, of calm settling like an invisible layer over every street and every canal. North of the Venetian lagoon, just beyond Murano, lies Burano, an island offering an immediate contrast to the solemnity of Venice's palaces and the luminous transparency of Murano's glass. Burano can be recognized from afar by its brightly painted houses, facades of deep red, vivid blue, brilliant green, glowing yellow, all reflected in the canals like fragments of a mosaic scattered across the water. This cheerful palette, repeated house after house, gives the island a singular look, picturesque yet harmonious, a chromatic repetition that, far from being jarring, creates a calm rhythm perceived both visually and emotionally. Tradition says that Burano, as fishermen painted their houses in bright colors so they could recognize them from afar when returning through the lagoon fog. Legend or truth, the custom has endured for generations, becoming part of the island's identity. Walking through its narrow streets, each corner offers new combinations of colors reflected in the canal water, multiplied into soft ripples that shift with the waves. The experience repeats itself, but is never the same. The same blue transforms with the light of morning, of midday, of evening. Burano is also renowned for its lace, an artisanal tradition that reached great prestige in the 16th and 17th centuries. The women of the island created the finest lace, known throughout Europe for its delicacy. Threads, worked with infinite patience, turned into flowers, geometric patterns, or intricate networks. Each piece the result of silent hours of repetition. Though production has declined, you can still see lace makers working outside their homes or in small workshops, moving the threads with rhythmic precision, almost hypnotically. The Museo del Merlito, housed in a former lace school, preserves historical pieces and recounts the evolution of this craft, as fragile and enduring as Murano glass. Life in Burano moves at a different pace than Venice. Its canals are narrower, its squares smaller, its rhythm closer to that of a village where everyone knows each other. In the main square, dedicated to composer Baldassare Galuppi, rise the church of San Martino and its leaning bell tower, tilting stubbornly above the colorful rooftops. Around the square, cafes and restaurants open onto the open air, where locals and visitors linger in conversation as fishing boats return to nearby docks with the day's catch. The sounds of Burano are soft and regular, the tapping of boats against wooden piers, the creak of oars in the water, the quiet voices of neighbors greeting one another, the clinking of cutlery in terraces serving simple dishes. The island is also known for its local cuisine, especially fresh fish dishes and risotto de go, made with a lagoon fish. Eating in Burano is sharing in a tradition repeated without hurry, where every dish reflects the link between the island and the surrounding water. Unlike Venice, where visitors can feel surrounded by grandeur, Burano offers intimacy. Its houses are low, its streets narrow, its canals modest. All of it creates a sense of closeness, as though time itself had slowed to a human scale, closer to the cadence of daily life than to the solemnity of history. Here, every colored facade, every moored boat, every woven lace piece becomes a simple repetition shaping the island's identity. As evening falls, Burano's colors soften. Red deepens toward garnet, blue fades toward gray, yellow warms into ochre. The lights of the houses glow and reflect in the water, creating a luminous mosaic trembling with each ripple. Silence spreads, broken only by distant voices or the occasional call of a bird crossing toward the lagoon marshes. Burano is, ultimately, the island of chromatic repetition and patient work. Its colors, which might seem excessive elsewhere, here form a calm and ordered visual language. Its lace, fragile and precise, recalls the dedication of generations who work threads as though weaving time itself. And its daily life, marked by fishing, cooking, and neighborly ties, reflects a continuity preserved through centuries. Burano seeks no grandeur, only persistence. The colors repainted, the lace still woven. The canals reflecting the same facades in the same sky, day after day. Beyond Murano and Burano, toward the northern edge of the lagoon, stretches Torcello, an island stripped of all excess. A place where time seems to have stopped in profound silence. If Murano speaks through the brilliance of glass and Burano through the vivid colors of its facades, Torcello speaks through the emptiness of its spaces, the austerity of its ancient stone, and the barely perceptible whisper of wind across its marshes. In ancient times, Torcello was one of the earliest settlements in the lagoon. During the 5th and 6th centuries, when mainland inhabitants fled barbarian invasions, they sought refuge on these waterbound islands. Here, they built a community that soon prospered, raising churches, palaces, and workshops. For centuries, Torcello was more populated than Venice itself, with tens of thousands of residents. But malaria, the gradual silting of the lagoon, and the rise of Venice led to its decline. Today, only a handful of people live on the island, and its open spaces seem to preserve the memory of what once was and what time has slowly erased. Travelers arriving in Torcello disembark at a modest pier, from which a straight path crosses the island. On either side, narrow canals bordered by tall grasses reflect the ever-changing sky of the lagoon. The path leads slowly toward the island's monumental heart, the Cathedral of Santa Maria Assunta and the Church of Santa Fosca. There is no rush here, for Torcello's silence compels each step to match its rhythm. The Cathedral of Santa Maria Assunta, founded in 639 and expanded in later centuries, is one of the earliest Christian monuments in the lagoon. Its interior, sober and solemn, is covered in Byzantine mosaics. In the apse, the figure of the praying Virgin rises above a golden background glowing softly in the filtered light. On the opposite wall, the Last Judgment unfolds across a vast composition where angels, saints, and human figures stand in silent eternal order. The marble floor, arranged in geometric patterns, bears the unevenness of centuries, softened by countless footsteps over time. The atmosphere invites contemplation. Only the faint sound of steps, only the echo of whispers, all wrapped in the stillness that defines Torcello. Beside the cathedral stands the Church of Santa Fosca, with its central plan surrounded by a circular portico. Its simple, balanced architecture recalls the Byzantine forms that inspired the lagoon's earliest builders. Inside, the dimness is nearly absolute, interrupted only by light entering through small windows. The space invites prolonged stillness, listening to the silence, accepting the slow passage of time. Outside, Torcello's main square holds a stone throne known as the Chair of Attila, said by tradition to have belonged to the King of the Huns. Whatever the truth, the seat remains as a symbol of a distant past, a fragment of the island's layered memory. Around these monuments stretch fields, gardens, and marshes. Sounds are minimal, the flight of birds crossing the sky, the rustle of wind through low vegetation, the soft lapping of water in the canals. Torcello has neither Murano's bustle nor Burano's brightness. Its identity lies in emptiness and openness, in the repetition of silence. At sunset, the island sinks into even deeper calm. Shadows lengthen across the fields, the light turns golden, then blue, and the canals reflect drifting clouds and broken lines. When the last vaporetto leaves for Venice, Torcello remains nearly deserted, wrapped in a silence that feels absolute. The cathedral, the church, the scattered houses become islands within the island, fragments of stone unmoved by time. Torcello is, in essence, a place of memory and absence. It represents Venice's origins, but also the fragility of human communities before time and nature. Where once there was trade, power, and intense life, now remain only mosaics, walls, and silence. That transformation makes Torcello unique, not for Venice's grandeur nor Murano and Burano's vitality, but for the stillness that reveals the impermanence of all splendor. In its slow rhythm, Torcello offers travelers the experience of suspended time, of a calm that needs no ornament. It is the island where the lagoon appears bare, essential, where water, wind, and stone form a landscape unchanged, repeating in silence like a steady breath accompanying those who listen. Venice's identity lies not only in its palaces, churches, or canals. It also lives at the table in the dishes that for centuries have reflected the geography of the lagoon and the commercial connections of the Republic. With the Mediterranean and the East, Venetian gastronomy is a quiet mirror of the city, a blend of simplicity and refinement, of humble ingredients and spices brought from afar, of traditions repeated every day in homes and taverns. The Rialto market, already described as the mercantile heart of Venice, is also the city's gastronomic soul. From early morning, boats unload fresh fish, shellfish, vegetables from nearby islands, and fruits brought from the mainland. The stalls, aligned beneath covered arcades, display sea bream, gill-tied fish, eels, cuttlefish, and crabs, while vendors repeat age-old gestures, arranging, weighing, wrapping. The market is a place of repetition, a daily heartbeat that feeds both households and restaurants. Among the most characteristic dishes is sardine sour, fried sardines marinated with onions, raisins, and pine nuts. Born from the need to preserve fish for long journeys, it became a traditional recipe where vinegar's acidity and dried fruits' sweetness balance each other in serene harmony. Another emblematic dish is risotto al nero di sepia, whose black color comes from cuttlefish ink. Its creamy texture and briny flavor evoke in every bite the constant closeness of water. No less important is bacala mantecato, made from dried cod whipped until it becomes light and creamy, then served on toasted bread. Its smoothness contrasts with the firmness of the original fish, transformed through a slow, almost meditative process. Other traditional dishes include fegato alla veneziana, veal liver cooked with sweet onions and polenta, a humble base of cornmeal accompanying meats, fish, or vegetables. An essential part of Venetian culinary life are the cicchetti, small portions served in taverns called baccari. Cicchetti might be marinated fish bites, croquettes, grilled vegetables, small sandwiches, or portions of cod. They are eaten standing or at simple tables, always with a glass of wine called ombra. The name, meaning shadow, comes from the old custom of wine cellars standing in the shadow of St. Mark's Campanile to offer drinks. Tasting cicchetti means joining in a daily ritual, repeated softly by locals and travelers, where food becomes a slow act of sharing. The aperitif holds a special place in Venice. Among the most popular drinks is the spritz, a mixture of sparkling wine, soda water, and a bitter liquor such as Aperol or Campari. Its orange color, bright and lively, contrasts with the softness of the lagoon evening, glowing in glasses like a fragment of liquid light. The spritz, accompanied by cicchetti, marks the day's end, a moment when conversation stretches, time slows, and the city's rhythm softens even more. Wines from the Veneto region also accompany Venetian cuisine, from light whites like Sauve or Pinot Grigio to reds like Valpolicella. Each glass deepens the city's connection to its land. For more festive occasions, Prosecco sparkling and delicate marks the continuity of family and social traditions. On the lagoon's islands and in the more remote areas, gastronomy stays closely tied to the landscape. In Brano, fishermen prepare risotto di go, made with a modest-looking but flavorful lagoon fish. In Torcello and the quieter shores, small gardens produce vegetables for simple minestrone soups. In Murano, alongside glassmaking, you also find old recipes rooted in the sea. Each island thus adds its own variation, a local repetition within Venetian cuisine as a whole. Eating in Venice is never rushed, not even in its simplest forms. Preparing a risotto, with rice slowly stirred until reaching the right creaminess, reflects the patience inherent to the city. Cicchetti, though small, are eaten in quiet succession, accompanied by conversation. Even the humblest dishes, polenta, grilled fish, require time, waiting, calm. At nightfall, restaurants along the canals light their terraces. The water reflects the lamps, multiplying their glow in trembling lines. The murmur of diners blends with the constant sound of water, the gentle knock of a gondola against its mooring, the bells marking another hour in the city's slow rhythm. Eating in Venice means immersing yourself in that continuity. The market that feeds, the dish being prepared, the diner waiting, the silence accompanying it all. It is a prolonged cadence, seeking not surprises but permanence. Venetian gastronomy is ultimately the city's expression in edible form, born of the lagoon and of distant exchanges, a mix of humility and refinement, repetition and memory. Each dish, each glass, each small bite reflects not only flavor, but also a rhythm, a way of being in the world that matches the slow flow of water and the persistence of stone. Though Venice may seem like a city suspended in time, wrapped in the silence of water and the echo of slow footsteps, it also preserves a festive tradition that, without breaking its essential calm, introduces moments of ritual and continuity. Venetian festivals are not isolated bursts of celebration, but ceremonies repeated year after year, century after century, becoming part of the city's fabric. The Carnival of Venice is the most famous celebration, known worldwide for its masks and costumes. Its origins go back to the Middle Ages, when citizens were allowed to hide their identities behind masks of leather, porcelain, or papier-mâché, momentarily erasing social distinctions. During the Republic's golden centuries, Carnival could last for weeks, with balls, theatrical performances, banquets, and processions. Today, though adapted to a different era, it keeps its essence. The city becomes a stage where white masks, black cloaks, and Baroque costumes appear again and again in streets and squares. The usual Venetian silence transforms into a denser murmur, yet the rhythm remains slow. Steps pausing for photos, boats gliding calmly, echoes of ancient music spreading without haste. The Venetian calendar is also marked by the Festa del Redentore, celebrated every July in memory of the end of the 1576 plague. The Church of the Redeemer, built on the island of Giudecca, is the center of this feast. A floating walkway connects the church to the Dorsoduro shore, allowing worshippers to cross the water in a slow procession. The day ends with fireworks reflected in the lagoon. Though the bursts of light seem to interrupt the usual stillness, the reflections in the water, the pauses between explosions, and the slow dispersal of the crowd always return the city to its original calm. Another major tradition is the Festa della Senza, commemorating Venice's marriage to the sea. Celebrated on Ascension Day, this ceremony once saw the Doge, and now the mayor, throw a golden ring into the laguna's waters as a symbol of eternal union with the sea. Today, the feast revives with a procession of historical boats sailing slowly toward the Lido, recalling the city's unbreakable bond with the waters that sustain it. Regattas, rowing competitions held throughout the year, are another expression of Venetian rhythm. The most famous is the Regatta Storica in September on the Grand Canal. Ancient, ornately decorated boats open the parade, followed by the racing gondolas. The dipping of oars into the water does not convey speed, but cadence, a repeated motion passed down from generation to generation. Religious celebrations are equally essential to Venetian life. The Festa della Salute in November is one example. Each year, a temporary bridge of boats connects St. Mark's to the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute. Thousands cross slowly, lighting candles and offering prayers in memory of the plague that struck the city in the 17th century. The atmosphere is solemn, marked by the silence of footsteps and the glow of flames reflected in the water. Across all these festivals, the common thread is continuity. They are not interruptions of time or abrupt breaks in the city's rhythm, but ritual repetitions reinforcing Venetian identity. Each carnival, each procession, each regatta is not a one-time event, but a return, a turning of the same ancient wheel. Even in its liveliest moments, Venice remains itself. Carnival masks move slowly. Regatta boats cut the water with measured strokes. Religious processions advance in silence. The city never yields to excess. It remains faithful to its unhurried rhythm, as if water and stone allowed no other kind of celebration than one aligned with their eternal tempo. Thus, Venice's festivals and traditions do not break its calm, they enrich it. They embody the collective memory of a people who have turned repetition into permanence. Carnival, processions, regattas, and commemorations are variations on the same theme: the city's continuity through time, the resilience of its identity, the ability to live each event as part of a slow, enduring cycle. Venice's architecture is a mirror reflecting the layers of its history. Unlike other cities, where styles succeed one another with sharp breaks, here they coexist, overlap, and soften each other. Byzantine, Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque stand side by side, linked by the water, eroded by the salt, unified by time. The result is not a chaotic mix, but a visual and rhythmic continuity, a harmony created by facades that, though diverse in origin, share the same stone foundations and the same intimate relationship with the water. The Byzantine style reached Venice through its contacts with Constantinople and the East. Its most magnificent example is the Basilica of St. Mark, with its 5 domes, golden mosaics, and Greek cross plan. In it, Eastern influence appears not only in the architectural form, but also in the use of light and color. The gold, spread across thousands of tesserae, does not shine violently but glows with constant serenity, wrapping visitors in a suspended atmosphere. Other Byzantine traces appear in palace details and scattered mosaics throughout the city, fragments of an ancient dialogue with the East. The Venetian Gothic, however, may be the city's most distinctive style. It is not the vertical, solemn Gothic of other parts of Europe, but a lighter, more open version adapted to the water and the lagoon's light. The Doge's palace and the Ca' d'Oro are its finest examples. In the Doge's palace, lodges of pointed arches and delicate tracery support upper walls adorned with geometric patterns, creating a facade lighter than it seems. At the Ca' d'Oro, balconies open to the canal with an almost textile transparency. This Gothic does not impose. It invites contemplation, blending with the water's reflections that duplicate and soften it. With the Renaissance, Venetian architecture adopted new proportions and symmetries under the influence of Andrea Palladio and Jacopo Sansovino. Yet in Venice, the Renaissance did not erase what came before. It added itself to the existing continuity. The Marciano Library, facing the Piazzetta of St. Mark's, is an example of classical balance, with columns and pediments recalling Roman models. Palladio, though he built little within the city itself, left his mark on the Church of the Redeemer in the Giudecca and on San Giorgio Maggiore across from St. Mark's Square. Their clear lines and harmonious proportions rise directly from the water, reflecting the union between classicism and the lagoon. The Baroque brought movement and ornamentation, especially in churches like Santa Maria della Salute. Its facade, decorated with statues and volutes, contrasts with the serenity of the great dome dominating the entrance to the Grand Canal. Inside, Marbles of various colors form geometric patterns, creating a space blending solemnity and light. Other Baroque churches, like the Gesualdi and Dorsoduro, repeat the same language softened over time by humidity and salt air, which blur contrasts and merge details into a single weathered texture. What unites these styles is how they relate to water. The facades of palaces and churches rise directly from the canals, without the mediation of squares or avenues. Their foundations, hidden below water level, rest on countless wooden piles, unseen yet persistent. Reflected in the water, each form multiplies. A Gothic arch, a Renaissance column, a Baroque statue mirrored on the shimmering surface, creating continuity that transcends stylistic differences. Erosion also contributes to this unity. The lagoon's salinity, the marine winds, the tides wearing its stone, and brick-alike soften edges, blur lines, erase details, covering the city in a single patina of time. A Gothic palace and a Renaissance one may look like siblings, bound by the same weathering, the same slow decay uniting all architecture under Venice's light and water. Inside, Venetian buildings reveal another dimension: marble floors with geometric designs, walls covered in frescoes or monumental canvases, ceilings gilded with carved wood. Yet even here, water is never far. The sound of waves reaches the roofs. Humidity permeates the walls, and every window opens toward liquid reflections. Venetian architecture is not just a collection of styles, but memory itself, made of stone and water. Each building recalls a historical moment, a contact with the East, an influence from the mainland, a devotion, a power. Together, though, they form a single fabric, where diversity softens into repetition, where monumentality becomes part of a broader cadence. Walking through Venice is not about isolating one style from another, but about perceiving architecture flowing like its canals, where Byzantine, Gothic, Renaissance, and Baroque coexist without competing, joined by the same diffused light, the same humidity, the same reflections, turning the entire city into one single work, always repeated, always changing, always the same. Venice's rhythm reaches its most delicate form at the end of the day. The light, which during morning and afternoon reflects off facades and canals with shifting clarity, gradually softens, first golden, then pink, finally turning blue. Each hour of the evening transforms the city, not abruptly but slowly, like a curtain descending gently on a stage that never fully darkens. On the Grand Canal, palaces glow with warm tones, their weathered surfaces catching the day's last sunlight. The water, which by day multiplies the facade's colors, now absorbs the fading light and returns it in trembling reflections. Gondolas glide back toward their moorings, oars dipping at longer intervals, vaporettos running less often, leaving long pauses when the canal seems empty, suspended. In those moments, silence grows, broken only by the splash of a wave or a distant voice. In St. Mark's Square, the crowd thins. Cafes light their terraces with soft lamps, and orchestras under the arcades play melodies that spread slowly across the nearly empty square. Notes repeat with measured rhythm, never hurried, accompanying the echo of footsteps across the stone pavement. The Basilica, bathed in artificial light, glows golden, while the Campanile rises dark against the dimming sky, its vertical line marking time above the square's vast open space. In quieter neighborhoods like Cannaregio or Castello, night brings even deeper silence. Narrow streets empty, windows glow above dark canals, and the dominant sound is water lapping against walls. In small campielli, locals linger in taverns, voices mingling with the clinking of glasses and plates. But a few steps away, stillness returns, broken only by the echo of your own footsteps on the damp stone. Bridges, busy by day, become silent lookouts at night. From them, you see nearly empty canals, lamps drawing golden lines across the water, facades melting into shadows. Reflection takes center stage, Each light, each glowing window, each lantern multiplies in the water below, trembling with the city's slow pulse. On the lagoon, the silence grows deeper still. Nearby islands fade into shadow, their outlines barely visible as horizon and sky merge. Wind stirs the wooden poles, creaking softly where they meet the water. Far off, a solitary boat crosses, leaving a silver trail behind it, glowing for a moment before dissolving into darkness. Night in Venice is not emptiness, but the day continuing in another tone. The city never truly sleeps. It simply slows even further. Bells mark the hours at long intervals, their sound traveling across the lagoon like waves fading into the distance. Each chime blends with silence, with the murmur of water, with the echo of footsteps far away. For those who walk it, nighttime Venice offers a sensory experience inviting contemplation. Air grows cooler, humidity heavier, reflections brighter. Monumentality dissolves into shadows, leaving only the quiet repetition of lights and sounds. The day's slow rhythm transforms into suspended time, where silence becomes the main presence. At sunset and night, Venice reveals its most intimate essence, a city that needs no noise to exist, number daylight's brilliance to display itself. In dim light, in trembling reflections, in silence broken only by bells, Venice shows its purest self, a space of continuous calm, of unchanging repetition, of stillness stretching until sleep blends with the murmur of water. Venice drifts away like a reflection on the water. The city does not vanish, but it dissolves into silence. Bridges, squares, canals, all repeat in memory like a soft echo, fainter each time, farther each time. The murmur of the water remains, constant, slow, inevitable, like a deep breath accompanying the traveler even after leaving its streets behind. The water strikes the stone gently, again and again, without ceasing. It strikes, then withdraws. Strikes, then withdraws. A sound without beginning or end, a sound that soothes. Bells ring in the distance, slow, deep, spaced far apart. One bell, then silence. Another bell, then more silence. Their rhythm stretches as though time itself were lengthening, dissolving. The sound does not awaken, it lulls, a distant pulse fading into air. The light fades. First the sun, reflected on the canals. Then the street lamps, trembling on the water. Finally the windows, closing one by one, leaving the city wrapped in shadows. Only darkness remains, only faint reflections, only the night repeating itself across every canal. Venice, suspended between water and stone, remains motionless in memory. A city that needs no movement to endure. A city resting in stillness. A city breathing with the water. The water strikes. The water withdraws. The water returns. The bells ring. The bells fade. The silence returns. The reflection trembles. The reflection breaks. The reflection dissolves. Everything repeats. Everything stretches. Everything disappears. Venice remains. Venice drifts away. Venice dissolves. The water, the silence, the sleep,